Welcome to a little P-type video portfolio with some samples across the user-centered design spectrum. So let me start with some Axure prototyping. We're kind of well known for that. We're one of the few people on the planet recommended by Axure as an Axure trainer. So that is our software for flowcharts, wireframes, and clickable interactive prototypes. I've done lots of that stuff, and my team has done lots of that stuff for various clients. We do it for Oracle and Cisco, and we do it for small startups who want to see some of their ideas come to life before a programmer writes a line of code. So one example in our portfolio is one we did for a well-known bank, and they had some flowcharts and they had some full fidelity comps that they had done, I think in Photoshop it was, and they wanted that brought to life in Axure for user testing. So flipping over to what it actually looks like, yes, it looks like a real web page, and so we can build something that looks and feels very realistic. The header is pinned and it's got some slight transparency, but where this prototype happens to really shine is in the level of realism related to calculating your, what would you call this? I guess an investment. So if I say that I want to invest for 12 months, I'll get 1.1%, and if I'm willing to put my money in longer, I'll get a larger percent. If I'm willing to invest more money, I get a larger percent. And this is also reflected lower on the page where we are actually doing a realistic calculation of how much interest you will earn based on how much you invest and how long you invest it. This, we didn't put in the commas on the numbers, but this is a realistic calculation. So if I'm only investing $5,000, I'm going to get lower interest rates, and this is the money I will make. So a prototype can be absolutely very realistic or can only be partially realistic. Here we've got a menu coming down. So it's a great way to go for anything UX loves to do before developers write a line of code. Great way to brainstorm, iterate, compare different solutions, and of course, user test. So next in the portfolio, I have an example of something that we did. It was really just wireframes for a new website for a company. In general, that's not very exciting, and in general, as a medium fidelity prototype or wireframe, it doesn't look very exciting. But it was part of a UX process that we did, and it's certainly something that we can show. So for example, this is just, obviously it looks pretty bland, but once graphic design and copy got their hands on it, the client ended up very happy. And another thing that we did here was we used Axure's ability to emulate responsive design by doing adaptive design. So we can say that there are certain breakpoints, and then we can do have this design rework itself for different sizes. So this would be the desktop size, this would be the tablet size, and this would be the phone size. So we're able to do anything that is going to be desktop or mobile responsive. We're able to emulate that when we do our prototyping, and that means you can click through this, and you can click through it on a web browser like I'm on now. You can click through it on a phone and really experience it. So again, another, so we did the interaction design here, but another great reason for prototyping. So moving through the portfolio a little bit. So next I want to talk a little bit about user research and personas. This is one of those areas of UX that not everybody knows about. They all think of UX as what you just saw, boxes on a screen. But how did we get there? Sometimes we have to do a lot of research to figure out who are these customers, what motivates them, what do they need, where are the real product opportunities, what can we build that's going to make sense, what's going to be the best execution of the best idea. And we start with research. So this is an example where we were researching for a foundation that works with people with a certain disease. And they wanted to know how they used fitness wearables like Fitbits and other trackers. And so we interviewed 12 of these people with this disease. We then distilled down what we heard and looked for patterns, and then we create personas, which some people call avatars, but in UX we call personas. And this is just a look at an archetypal client. And so you end up with 6 or fewer of these. You don't make 15 of them if you think you have 15 different clients. You have to distill them down. And so this is one of the ones that we did. You give her a name and a picture, and that way it starts to feel like a real life person. And you socialize this across the organization. The marketing people should know these. The tech and engineering people should know these. Everybody should always have the user in mind when we're building. And this was a little story about a great personas triumph that I had, where for another company, a financial services company, I did 6 personas. And I, of course, chose stock photos for them and gave them names and gave them little life stories based on the interviews that I had done. And I couldn't even speak with customers in that case. I was speaking with, let's see, I spoke with some of the stakeholders and I spoke with some of the customer support representatives to tell me about customers. And after I developed these people, which to me were real people, they showed me a video they had shot of testimonials from real clients, and the people looked almost exactly like these people. I had matched them up so well. I felt so proud, like, yeah, I can do this. So in this particular case, we had 6 different personas. This was someone who just kind of accidentally fell into financial trouble. This is someone who's not in financial trouble but wants to learn more about maintaining his finances so he doesn't fall into trouble. And then a lot of people forget that some of their customers are not the people who are buying a product or calling the support center. In this case, this was a nonprofit. So the donor is also a persona, because that's somebody that we have to take into consideration, design for, build for. So that's a little bit of a look at personas. This is a project that we did this year. And we're just doing the finishing touches on it now. I'm recording this in July 2018. This is an e-commerce website and a woman who has a retail store in New York. And we started with a UX optimization report. And here's a little screenshot of what that looks like, though I'm doing them in a different format now. And basically, we take screenshots of the existing experience, whether that's a website, mobile web app, or something else, and we give it some commentary. Here's where we think this is going wrong or potentially going wrong. Obviously, the problem here was that her header was so tall, and she had this pop-up, and she had all these other things that even on my 32-inch television that I use as a screen, I couldn't get too much of her homepage at a time. And the messages weren't as clear, and the modules didn't seem as modern. So these were some of the types of things that we were pointing out. And she decided to embark on a huge project with us. So we started with information architecture. And that's where you're looking at the structure, the navigation, the hierarchy, the taxonomy. And so she really needed a lot of menu help. So we started with a card sorting project, which has to do with getting your users or archetypal users to do some of this sorting for you. And we asked people some questions to get into their heads a little bit and learn about habits and motivations. And eventually we ended up with a matrix like this, which helps us see where the people who took the tests see relationships. So the darker the color, the stronger the relationship, and the higher the number. And it tells us when we redo her menus, what should we probably group together because people saw them as related. And then once we created the new menus and the new structure, we can then test that with what's called a tree test. And for example, this was one question from the tree test. You love anything that smells like coconut. How would you find anything? And the answers we decided were quote unquote right were browse our entire catalog or search, because we don't have a category that specifically says coconut, and we wanted to see if people would figure that out. So this shows us how many people got it right, how quickly they got it right, how directly they got it right. So in this one down here, you can see some blue. The blue means they went there, but then changed their mind and backed out. So we're looking at a lot of different things that tell us whether or not this was successful, because sometimes even if people do have success, but that success is indirect because they tried a couple of things first and then backed out, I might still see that as a failure. And I might still imagine that there are improvements to be made even in a navigation. So UX can even isolate this type of thing and work really closely on it rather than just saying, here's your new menus, good luck. And a great outcome from this client, I'll flip back to my Chrome browser here. So she was recently written up, this is from June 2018. She was written up about some of the changes she had just made to her site and talked about some of her year-over-year comparisons, which of course were excellent, and also mentioned us, which was beautiful. We got mentioned all over the article for the help that we had given her and some of the ideas that we'd given her and some of the changes we made, where she was able to see some pretty immediate increases that I believe have continued for her. We also helped her with some business suggestions. So we created some new products based on what we learned about our customers. And so again, we don't usually stay in a box too long. Even if you tell us like, just make this, we tend to have a lot of ideas and suggestions and things we hope people will experiment with. Now, the next story has to do a little bit with process flows, those step-by-step processes that you find on websites that can often really break an experience. They're too long, they're too complicated, they're too annoying. Are they really necessary? They ask too many questions. And I apologize that the subject matter may be a little bit uncomfortable for some people, but it is a real case study, and I'd rather talk about it than not, even if the subject matter is a little uncomfortable for some people. A startup with tens of millions of dollars came to an ad agency, and they brought me in as a freelancer. And they wanted to sell people testing for sexual diseases. And I'm thinking, okay, this is in America, and in America, you can go to your doctor for that testing, or you can go to free clinics. So I'm not too sure why these people are going to try to do that. And they also were basically trying to charge people cash, which also didn't make sense because many, but certainly not all, Americans do have health insurance, or again, can walk into a free clinic and get tested. So they wanted the new version of their website to match the new script they had written for their call center. If you called in, there were certain questions you were asked in a certain order, and they wanted the new website to match those questions and that order. So I decided I didn't like the order, and I decided to build what I thought was the best way to go. And again, this is a medium fidelity wireframe, certainly not final text or graphic design, and this was 2013, so I know it's a little clunky looking. But as soon as they saw the order that I had put everything in, they said, nope, 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 legal will never go for it. We have to ask them a lot of personal information first and force them to create an account. And then we'll ask medical questions and suggest tests and have them check out. So this is where you get those tests suggested. And I didn't like that, but I built it. And so, for example, this is just some of the information that they wanted to ask people up front before we asked them medical questions or suggested tests to them. They really wanted them basically to commit and open an account, which I just thought didn't match what a user would naturally want to do, but they were insisting upon it. So ultimately, this project got very interesting when it came time for testing. They spent over $20,000 in San Francisco having a live moderated tests with 8 participants who were tested separately, and I was able to watch them on a live remote video. And they showed them the version they wanted with that order. But they surprised me by, after they went through that version, they showed them my original version and asked them which order they liked better or which process they thought was better. And ultimately, 7 out of the 8 participants strongly preferred my version, which then was the second version. Though pretty much all 8 said, I would never use this company at all. If I want sexual disease testing, I'm just going to go to my doctor or a free clinic. So I was kind of right there as well. And this is a kind of a long case study, but I'll breeze through it. This was a 6-month project for a huge national financial company, 18 stakeholders, all from different departments, all fighting each other, all sure that they had the most important department and the most important product in the company, and really some tough personalities. And we started with competitive analyses, looking at some of their competitions, competition websites. I wrote up a report. We did user research. We interviewed 30 people. We did personas. I had to speak mostly to customer service reps as well as some of their financial agents. And of course, a comedy moment was I found out one of the agents was from my hometown. And when he realized that, for some reason, on a recorded call, he said, I bet I smoked pot with your grandmother, in this heavy New York accent. And I was like, no, definitely not. Thank you so much. Part of the problem of this site was it all had to be reorganized. So this was a huge information architecture project. The colors represented the different departments that would be responsible for the content, and the circles represent which template this page was going to use, because obviously on a site with hundreds of pages, you really want to get it into templates. And ultimately, we did all the interaction design and so many things for this client. Here's an example of an annotated wireframe for them. So the annotations are on the side. This is a little different than a prototype. This is something we sometimes deliver, especially to developers. Developers love to click through the prototypes, and sometimes they do want some of these wireframes with all of these notes on it, giving them some specific information about the functionality or the interactivity. Now, if you try to go to this company's website now, you'll see it looks different. This project was done in 2013. It looks like they've made changes since. But so that's kind of a short look at some of our portfolio stuff. Again, a lot of clients tend to spend anywhere from a few $1,000s with us, especially for some prototyping, up to tens of thousands of dollars with us for some of these longer projects. These longer projects with more user-centered design tasks or more problems that we need to solve. So the price ranges are really a bit all over the place. But what we always do with each client is if you can talk to us or send us your requirements, once we can bang that out with you and ask some questions, we always give you a detailed proposal and estimate. So you're never going to enter into a project with us where you have no idea what it's going to cost. We do charge hourly. We don't give any flat rates other than some of our reports, our flat rate reports. But we do charge by the hour. But since I've been doing this 24 years, I've gotten pretty good at estimating time. So, and if the scope changed and the time estimate's going to change, we of course let you know in writing so that we can make sure that you approve the additional time. So everything's in a project management system. Everything is tracked. Working with us will honestly be a breeze. Everybody's happy. Again, you can check me out on LinkedIn. Most people tend to leave comments for me personally on LinkedIn. But Ptype is a company with other workers, though I do love to try to do as much of the work myself as I can. But all of our workers are British in England, Americans in America, and people in Italy, where I've been spending a lot of my time. So we're not sending work to other countries. The people you're talking to are the people doing the work. So if we can answer any other questions about our work or provide a proposal, please let me know. I'm always happy. Jump right into my calendar. I'll give people the calendar URL here. So that's ptype.cal, so pty.pe/cal. We'll bring up our, we are working on speeding up our site. We'll bring up our appointment calendar, and you're always welcome to grab any appointment you see available for the consultation call. And again, if you're in North America, you can grab those time zones. Europe, you can grab those time zones and just grab a call 30 minutes, or you can add an additional 30 minutes if you feel like you need longer. So thank you again for your time, and let me know what we can do next.